Hello.
Welcome. And just like that was met with mixed reviews. You know, some of them, including Bruising, it was variously called.
I don't read reviews, so you don't have to tell me.
Oh, okay, I won't tell you. I know you don't actually.
And it was a great success. So
it was a great
what
success.
Gonna do? That must have really bugged them.
You also don't actually look at the series. Yeah, so you've never actually.
I don't look
seen
at my work, and I don't read reviews. Kind of a curiosity that. No, the first one, people always shared with me how poorly it was received and how much people didn't care for it and how much they enjoyed, bickering over its merits. It's just, I think, the nature of particular kinds of programming and originally had never been done, and women weren't talking that way, behaving that way, being intimate in that way. And it was very curious this time round. That people didn't want women of a certain age on television, and they didn't like the kind of problems that they were communicating or the kinds of conversations they wanted to have on the margins, like on the periphery. But the truth is, there's always been this extraordinary, gang of 10 million plus who were there, for 27 years, and I think it's hard to ignore that there was a real connection. And I think that's kind of the greatest gift of all. You don't want to work for yourself. You're doing something every day, 16, 18-hour days, 100-hour weeks, because you're wanting it to be as good as it possibly can be and make a connection with somebody. And so much work as an actor doesn't get seen, it doesn't kind of cut through all the noise. So we always felt so lucky and so touched and so appreciative of the kind of connection the show made, and didn't really pay attention to the peripheral chit chat because it didn't really penetrate what we were doing every day.
What are your thoughts on the impact of AI generated characters? The Tilly Norwoods, on the future of entertainment. How do you think about that, or what do you think about it?
I think I don't even understand actually how that is multiplied. I think it's a real concern because I don't really understand, when do we fade out and that becomes, and also I don't know that I completely understand the human appetite for that versus what we know to be a real performance, even if it's been through an editing room and even if it's been touched up. We're still, I think a majority of us are relying upon a human exchange. So I don't know if it's just time and erosion where our eyes adapt, but I do think it's a concern because I think there is something so unpredictable about the human and the inability to repeat. And I think that's what makes the theater so special, is that it's completely out of control in many ways. There's an audience and there's an actor, and they rely on each other, and one day you have a great show, and one day it's lousy, and one day you forget a line, or all sorts of things. And even on film, even though I know that there's so much now that can be fixed and made prettier or better or tighter or faster, there is still this human element. And when we talk about the movies that we love, we typically talk about the performances by great, great actors or brilliantly funny actors. And I'm not sure yet that AI will be able to replicate that kind of live nerve, living kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm very uneducated about AI. It terrifies me.
Librarians who are fighting against book bans by local school boards and in school libraries, and in some case, coming under extreme duress because of refusing to ban the books.
I was sort of raised in a library. I lived in Cincinnati, Ohio until I was about 11 years old, and we had a wonderful public library. We went a couple times a week. It's where all of our books came from. We didn't have a television in our home. We had to have a book with us at all times, whether we could read or not. My mother was an educator. She grew up in a library. And so libraries were just very much a sort of a necessary and fundamental part of our lives. And the idea that there would not be available to me books that I might reach for, want, need, don't even know about, that might change the course of my life, or I don't know, maybe cultivate compassion, curiosity, interest, help me know people far away, people who are different religions, political beliefs, ideologies, any number of things, all the ways in which information and access to information can change a person's life. The idea that that wouldn't be a possibility for perhaps millions of readers in our country seemed devastating and dangerous. And so when the filmmaker came to me with a producer and asked if our company at HBO would participate in producing and fundraising, I was immediately interested.
The books that are actually banned, and because many of them are children's books.
The thing that most confounds me is that nobody is pressing these books into anybody's hands. We're not forcing anybody to read a book. We're not, no librarian that I've ever met, and certainly I've met many librarians at this point just through, the work on this movie. No one's forcing anybody to read a book. It's the availability of the book. And that's what I think we all thought was kind of who we were as a country. This idea of access to freedom, the freedom to read and know other people and perhaps know ourselves better.
Many institutions right now in the United States are coming under attack. I mean, as we discussed, libraries, universities, cultural centers, the press.
When you start defining what is art and what's appropriate, and then you threaten dollars, and you threaten access, and you threaten what can be produced and how, and the kind of language that can be used, not just on stage or on a canvas, but the way we talk about it. I just think it's really dangerous, and I think it doesn't allow us to be this rich culture that we should be. I mean, cultural institutions are one very specific thing. Nonprofits are one specific thing. University, it's so complex that I don't want to take a stab at all the ways in which it's been handled poorly. And I think in some instances there are people that might, that have concerns for probably legitimate reasons that they think are sensitive and compassionate, humane. I think it's the way in which we've gone about talking about it, and I think maybe one of the most consequential concerns is the way in which we just talk to each other. That there's, that everything is black and white. That the nuance and the hardest parts of things are not being discussed. And my experience as a parent, as an employee, as an employer, as a sibling, as a daughter is like the most productive things come from that part in the middle, where things are much more complex. And that's not the way we're talking about any of this. And it's not been helpful to students. It's not been helpful to academia. It's not been helpful to institutions. It's not been helpful, to what we, I don't know. I think we were a country that exported a lot of really exciting things, and art being among them. And I think it's just really limiting people. People are afraid. People are afraid in classrooms. Professors are afraid. Artists are afraid. And it just feels like it's paralyzed us. And I just think it's going to take a long time to course correct. And I don't know how one begins to do that. I'm not equipped, but I'm worried. Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you.